Welcome to the Grateful Life webcast. I'm your host, Ashley Eicher. Today we'll be talking about the Mediterranean diet, and joining us is Chef Thomas Yun, VP of Dining Services at Brookdale Senior Living, and Dr. Christy Phillips, a gerontologist with over 30 years of experience researching health and wellness for older adults. Chef Thomas, Dr. Phillips, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us. It's great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Of course. Chef Thomas, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started.
Yeah, so I actually got started when I was a pretty young kid. My parents owned and operated a small little grocery store. And believe it or not, before I was cooking, I was actually doing some butchering in one of their stores. All that to say, I went on to go to culinary school in San Francisco, and I've been chefing ever since for about the last 20 years.
Dr. Phillips, Christy, can you tell us what a gerontologist does and how did you get started in your career?
Yeah, a gerontologist really just studies aging broadly. So, my background is in nutrition, exercise science. I've worked in college strength and conditioning, corporate wellness, and transitioned into working with older adults. Loved it so much that I went back, got my PhD in gerontology, and since then have worked in industry and research, just figuring out how we not just live longer, but we live better longer.
Chef Thomas, for someone who's never tried Mediterranean eating, what should be on their grocery list?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So first off, it's seasonal produce, vegetables, and even seeds and nuts, as well as fruits that's in season, that's what's around us. And so there's usual suspects like tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, but how about eggplants, right? And then also just beets, and then even things like, ingredients like pumpkin seeds, almonds. And so all that to say, those are some of the things I would put on someone's list of ingredients for Mediterranean.
What is the biggest mistake people make when they decide to start eating a Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, I think it's assuming that it's primarily Greek or Mediterranean cuisine, which those are a couple of them, but there's also several cuisines represented all throughout Europe, as well as North Africa and the Middle East. And so there's a lot of ethnicities represented, and you can actually mix and match some of those ingredients or even some of the preparations. So yeah.
I think the hardest thing for me is to keep track of which foods are in season when.
Yeah.
How do you advise clients to do that?
Well, if you actually go to the grocery store, you'll be able to see it. Whatever is around, go ahead and choose those items. And so that's what's so great about it. There's so much flexibility with what's there in the grocery stores. Try to stay away from what's in the cans or what's processed.
Right.
So really using fresh product is really optimal.
So what Mediterranean flavors have really surprised you?
You know, I guess it's all the versatility that surprises me about Mediterranean cuisine, and really the level of freshness, and also the constant state of preparing food every day.
Right.
I think I just love that aspect of it, and tailoring your diet around that. I think it helps your health, helps brain function, and obviously nutrition as well.
Absolutely. There's nothing I get more excited about in spring than when the farmers markets start opening. I mean, I literally, when the one that's near my house opened up the very first day, I drove by and started like singing out loud because I was so excited about the heirloom tomatoes, the squash, all of these gorgeous vegetables that I did know were in season. But I think sometimes, again, it's so hard with the grocery stores. So
Yeah.
I like that you talked about it from that perspective.
Yeah, that's a great point. If there is a farmer's market,
Yeah.
go, please go. Grab what you can. And that's the thing, there's so much pride in growers and farmers when they're growing that produce in peak season. When it's in peak season, it's also peak flavor.
Right.
So that's what's also really important. You don't have to do much to the food when it's really peaking in its flavor.
Well, and so many people hear this or watch this and think, okay, eating a Mediterranean diet sounds really expensive. So what do you think about that?
I don't think that's true, especially if it's in season. And talking about that seasonality, we want to actually garner that power, and versus spending money on processed food, you're paying for those processes.
Right.
Versus growing it fresh and then going after that produce right then and there. So it takes a little bit of planning and work to do that, but it's definitely not more expensive. I think it's actually less.
I say, how do you make it budget friendly? Is it really just paying attention to what's in season at that time?
Exactly. So like for strawberries, as an example, to try to get strawberries in the winter, you don't want to do that. Number one, they're not as flavorful,
Right.
right? And then they're definitely more expensive because they have to grow them in alternate ways. But if you get them in from May through July, let's say, that's the peak season. You really want to do that, as well as watermelon.
I say they look so good
that's
now,
right.
all those strawberries.
That's right. So
What do you say to somebody that says it takes too long to cook from scratch and I don't have time to do it?
I would say it just takes a little bit of planning.
Right.
And you can actually put dishes together by actually planning and prepping prior, a few hours prior, or even the day before, a little bit at a time. And so when you're assembling and cooking with that prep done, it's actually pretty easy and it's actually pretty fun as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about olive oil because there's so many options at the store. I've heard a lot of different schools have thought about it. So from your perspective, how do you pick the right olive oil?
So here's what I'll say. European olive oil and even South American olive oils, they really protect the quality. And what it means when you hear extra virgin, it's really important because there's a certain level of acidity that it cannot have. So they're really trying to retain its purity.
Right.
And it's pressed. And so they're not adding any other processes other than pressing those olives and really grading out the quality of the olive. And so also I prefer them stored in glass. The reason why I say that is because if it's in plastic or some other container, it can tend to oxidize more quickly. So if it's glass or stainless steel containers, that's probably what's preferred. But all that to say, that's probably on the quality front, what's preferred. Also, you can use olive oil for all kinds of things, not just salad dressings.
Right.
I use it for cooking.
I use it for cooking all the time.
Yeah,
That's mainly what I cook with.
Absolutely. And then even frying, shallow frying if you want to. I think there's a lot of myths about losing the nutritional value of olive oil once it's heated, but it's not true. You still retain so much more than not using other seed oils in particular.
Well, Chef Thomas is about to show us a starter that it will take 10 minutes to make. But Christy, for you, I would love to hear your reaction after we watch this of how this connects to brain health. Let's head into the kitchen where Chef Thomas will show us a refreshing Mediterranean starter that's perfect for summer and takes just minutes to prepare.
Hello everybody, we're gonna get started with our watermelon feta salad. But before I start, I wanna talk to you about how to choose a watermelon. So what I wanna show you is this yellow sunspot, okay? It shows you where the sun was hitting on that watermelon, helps really develop the sugars, and hopefully it's gonna be a sweet watermelon with that sun's help. Secondly, you wanna be able to tap the watermelon to hear that hollow, kind of echoing sound out of the watermelon, kind of like this. So all that to say, if you can get those two things, you have a better chance of getting a sweeter watermelon. We're gonna cut the top and bottom off and start to peel the watermelon. So I take my knife, do a slice into the watermelon on both sides. So you got the top and bottom, I'm gonna stand it up. And as I'm peeling this, I'm gonna go all the way around. The more you do this, the easier it'll get, but trust me, for what we're doing, this is the best way to actually peel the watermelon. So here we go. From the top going on down, exposing that beautiful red color, okay? All right, so just go all the way around, gonna expose that red flesh, and then look it, if there's any white on there, it's okay, we can go back. I'm gonna go ahead and clear out my cutting board, get all this beautiful rind out of the way, then we'll flip it over. Oh, I got some spots there, that's okay. We're just gonna go ahead and finish peeling it, getting all the way down to the red. Traditionally, I do this also with cantaloupes, other melons. I peel it the same exact way. We've got this peeled watermelon now, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start slicing it and then cubing it for our salad. For this recipe, I only use about half. The other half, what's so great about it, you can use it for snacks. Okay, so there's the half I want to use. All right, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and create planks about 3/4 of an inch wide, kind of plank that off. And then just from the top to bottom, going through with my knife, making even cuts as possible. All right, so I've got my planks, and then I'm gonna set it on its side. So the actual moisture of the watermelon will help kind of dress the actual salad, okay? I'm just gonna cut, again, about 3/4 of an inch. And look, if you're not used to using knives, all right, so I've made those cuts. Now I'm gonna make these cubes now. I did it lengthwise. It doesn't have to be perfect. It could look rustic. All right, we'll get this into the bowl now. So fun. And what a great summer salad and great use of a fruit in a salad. So refreshing. Next, I'm gonna actually take a cucumber and we'll dice that up as well. I love the idea of a cucumber in this salad as well because there's a similar texture, but it's the contrast of the savoriness. And so we'll do, let's say, half a cucumber and just very easily cut it in half lengthwise, and then one more time, so we're quartering it lengthwise. Really, really simple. Cube it similar sizes, going across, making planks. All right. This just adds a nice little subtlety of contrast of flavor, but definitely maintains that freshness and refreshing part of the salad. Now we've got our feta cheese. So today we're actually using sheep's milk feta cheese. There's a difference between sheep's milk and cow's milk, but here's what I'll say. What's so special about sheep's milk? I've got two here. The thinner sheets and pieces are actually Greek, and the larger block is Israeli. So throughout the Mediterranean, you'll be able to find different types of feta based on the ethnicity or country that you're in. So we're just gonna go ahead and use and crumble up the Greek feta, but it's crumbly. We'll use one of these sheets. Oh, you can smell it. I also like the saltiness of the feta in this salad, and just again helps that sweetness and the contrast with the saltiness. So we're just gonna crumble this up into smaller, like almost like dime-sized pieces. And last but not least is our fresh mint. So I'm just gonna take some off. So here's one of the things about fresh mint. It's really important that we have a sharp knife, because when you're actually cut through the knife, or any herbs for that matter, you don't want to tear it. You actually want clean cuts. And so as I pick the leaves off, I want to be able to cut it, and you can actually smell it as we're picking the leaves. But when you cut it, you don't want it to lose that flavor. It almost creates like a bitter flavor if it's just torn. And so we'll pick it off there, and then we're just going to go ahead and slice this very carefully with a very, very sharp knife. So here we go. This actual cut is called a chiffonade. It's almost like you might have heard the term julienne. So I'm just julienne the actual herb or the mint. So take your time, slice. Gosh, it's going to be so refreshing during the summer of a light salad versus a heavy salad. And this mint just adds to the refreshing component part. You can drizzle that over. All right. Add that there. And then we're just going to give it a quick mix. Get that mixed through. Wow, just the aroma and smell of this. I can't wait to get into this. But this is going to set us up for our next dishes that we'll do when we explore more of the Mediterranean diet and cuisine. Okay, and then I think the saltiness it will be good, so I won't add salt to this because that feta is salty. What I will do is add a little fresh cracked pepper to it. All right. So we'll go ahead and give this a good mix. Get all the ingredients mixed in. And then we'll go ahead and set this aside for later.
Christy, for you as a gerontologist, what did you see in that recipe that gets you excited?
Well, it looks delicious, first of
It
all,
does.
but from a gerontologist perspective, it had the star being watermelon is really impressive to me. Watermelon is what I would consider a functional food, meaning, yes, it has some good basic nutrients in there, but it also has some other compounds that confer additional health benefits. And from a gerontologist perspective, that not only helps us live longer, but helps us live better through better health.
Yes. Okay, so the watermelon and feta combination I
Mhm.
love and make on a regular basis. I've learned more about feta today, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
But I like to put an heirloom tomato from the farmer's market in mine. Do you do that?
I don't add tomato to a watermelon salad. I would actually
Okay.
take the watermelon out. And
Okay.
here's the other thing too about tomatoes. They're best served at room temperature.
Mhm.
And then this salad is definitely chilled and cold for refreshing component. And the tomato, I think, can take away from the watermelon. The watermelon can take away from the tomato.
It's so
So, but
delicious.
to each
Chef
their own.
Thomas.
You can totally do it. I'm just sharing my preference.
He's
So,
like, you can do it
yeah.
as an amateur cook. I, as a chef, will not be doing it. I appreciate the honesty. What made you choose this combination for the starter?
Yeah, I chose this because I think it's very simple, very approachable, and honestly, you can do all the cuts and prep ahead of time, and then even assemble it when you want to actually dish it up. So that was part of the reason, and it's seasonal. It's right now. It's great timing to do it.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I love how refreshing watermelon is.
Hmm.
Both of you feel that way too?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely. And those other little touches of the cucumber, and then the mint, and then the saltiness of that feta really adds value to round out the dish. And so, yeah, it's interesting because there's like a natural dressing between the feta cheese
Mhm.
and then also the watermelon juice. So, yeah,
Well, and I thought it was really interesting. You specifically use sheep's milk
yeah.
feta.
Hmm.
Why is that? Is there really a difference? And what if someone can't find it?
So you definitely can find it
Okay.
for sure, but it's usually in a brine.
Mhm.
So that's number one. There's a lot of flavor. There's just a deeper, richer flavor in the feta cheese when it's made with sheep's milk. It's also creamier.
Yeah.
And I would definitely also always get it in a brine. There's some sheep's milk feta that's crumbled already, not in a brine. So I would also say get it in the brine,
Okay.
and you'll see the difference in flavor. And there's definitely a punch of flavor between the two.
Absolutely. Christy, for older adults, why do you think this salad is so great?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, it's very hydrating, and staying hydrated is super important. But also, with watermelon being sort of the main ingredient, watermelon has the compounds in watermelon have been associated with a lot of health benefits, including lower blood pressure, improved blood flow. It even can support muscle and immune function. And then the salad as a whole is pretty rich in antioxidants. So, antioxidants we know can help reduce inflammation, um, decrease oxidative stress, and those things can actually lead to accelerated aging and disease processes.
Well, I think this is the perfect bridge for us to talk about the science behind Mediterranean eating and aging. What actually happens to a 70-year-old's body when they switch to Mediterranean eating?
Yeah, well, I'll first provide a disclaimer that any one individual's experience will be varied depending on your current health, your genetic makeup, other lifestyle factors.
Right.
But the evidence suggests that some things you might expect would be improved metabolic and cardiovascular health. From a brain health perspective, you might expect to have preserved cognitive function
Mm.
and maintained integrity of your brain structure. You might also expect to see lower inflammatory markers, which again, super important
Yeah.
for disease processes.
How long might someone start to notice? How long would it take for them to start to notice like cognitive changes?
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Well,
So
everybody's different.
everybody's different, but also a lot of what we know about the Mediterranean diet is based on observational studies, meaning we collect information about what people report they're eating, sometimes over a long period of time, and then we compare people who are eating in the Mediterranean style with people who aren't, and look and see what the differences are. So because we're sort of looking at it in that way, it's hard to put a timeline on there.
Right.
There have been some intervention studies that have actually introduced the Mediterranean diet and tested the effects. And depending on the study design and how adherent people are to the diet, you might expect some changes to be seen within a few weeks to a year. But all of the study designs are a little different. They all use different cognitive measures, so it all sort of depends on that. I would say that what the evidence suggests is that you might expect to see preserved brain health and brain function rather than more immediately noticeable changes.
When I think so often too in the world we live in where we want that immediate gratification, people are like, will this happen overnight? And tomorrow I'm as sharp as I was when I'm 25. Like, it takes time. So can you speak to that just a little bit?
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, that's the case with anything, right?
Right.
Diet, exercise. What I would expect, I mean, I think after a short period of time, you might notice you feel better overall, particularly if you're pretty adherent to the diet. You might be able to notice a difference in how you feel because of the reduced inflammatory markers and
Right.
so forth. So, I would say that might be more noticeable than something related to brain changes.
And what about just a slower decline over time? Have you noticed that?
I think that's really where the research suggests is
Yeah.
that you might expect to see slower decline, preserved cognitive function over time. Yeah.
Okay, so Chef Thomas,
Yeah.
when families tell you, my dad won't eat fish, which this is my father, if we say the
Sure.
word healthy, he is like, I'm out. He's
Yeah.
out the back door.
Yeah.
What is your go to solution?
So, couple of things.
Okay.
Number one,
This is really a show for me,
Yes.
is what's happening.
Well, if it's with fish, usually what's happened is a lot of people have had bad experiences with fish
Right.
because it got undercooked, improperly cooked, overcooked, all kinds of things. So I think if you were able to practice cooking fish the proper way, we can definitely serve it in a way where it's not too robust.
Right.
And then also picking the type of fish that is naturally not as robust as other fishes. And so there's that number one option with
Right.
fish to give it a fair chance in that way. Secondly, there's other seafood. There's shrimp. There's scallops.
Right.
There's shellfish. Maybe your dad likes lobster, and so or crab. There's
He
other
prefers a
ways.
steak, but
Sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. And then also definitely with chicken
Right.
as well. So there's other options out there. And I'm not saying, hey, you should eat fish every day. I would, but are they open to getting used to the idea of, hey, once in a while, let's do the fish and let's see it being prepared properly?
Right.
And it's not just the fish, it's everything else also with it.
Well, I know for me personally, I could eat salmon every day of the week.
Yeah,
But there are other types of fishes that I'm halibut I could eat all the time.
yeah,
But there are other types of fishes where I'm like, oh, I don't know that I could do that. And it's something about either the smells or probably like you're
Yes.
talking, it's so robust
yes,
that it doesn't necessarily work for my system. But I could eat salmon and halibut all day long.
yeah. Well, and that could mean also the freshness of the fish. And so it's really trying to understand what works best for you.
Right.
And then you can stay away from that fish that, is a little bit too robust.
Right.
Mhm.
So I noticed you chose a branzino for our next cooking segment. Why is this fish so good for older adults?
Yeah, so number one, branzino is the Italian name for this European sea bass. And it's so available in the Mediterranean Ocean. And so in France, they call it loup de mer.
Yes.
In Italy, they call it, in Greece, they call it something else. But all that to say, it's a very mild fish. I do prefer it with the skin on. But yeah, it's a fish that's well known in the Mediterranean.
What if you can't find it?
You can replace it with other types of sea bass, or a snapper, or even tilapia if you wanted. But I do want to point out that the skin, why I keep the skin on, And even if it was salmon, I would even keep the skin on because there's a high level of omega-3 fatty acid concentrated in between the skin and the flesh of the fish. And so if you can get that skin crispy and be able to eat it in a way, hey, okay, versus soggy skin, crispy skin, I think it's worth trying for sure, with the health benefits included in there.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to work on the skin part.
Yeah.
I have a new challenge, so I appreciate that. Christy, what does the latest research say about the Mediterranean diet and memory?
Well, memory is a little tricky. There are different types of memory out there. So depending on how you define it might tell us, we might hear different things. There is some research to suggest that certain types of memory might benefit from the Mediterranean diet, like episodic memory, meaning your ability to remember specific events or episodes from your life. But I would say overall, we need more research to really figure out what that link is.
Absolutely. So I got another question on the skin on, skin off thing real quick.
Yeah.
So I tend to cook salmon with the skin on, but then I don't eat the skin.
Oh,
So
I
are
would
you
eat
saying
it.
you say eat the skin?
Yeah. But
Okay.
and you'll see the way I prepared it, I cook the skin side down first and cook it about 80% of the way on the skin side. So it really crisps up that skin and then finish it after flipping it over.
Okay, I'm excited for this demo.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm learning new things today. And I thought I was an expert in cooking salmon. Apparently not. Amateur over here. For both of you, what is one change someone can make today that would have the biggest impact for their health?
I would say just going back to what we talked about earlier with freshness of those ingredients around them, what's in season.
Right.
Just that change alone, where you eliminate, processed foods, is a huge difference, and that I think that can make an immediate impact to your health. And so, so I would say that, especially when it comes to produce, vegetables and fruit.
Kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where people feel like, okay, if I do one meal tomorrow, is my whole life going to change? And it really is the consistency over time. But that one step does make a massive difference. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just taking that one step.
Well, behavior change is hard.
Right.
So just that one step builds your self-efficacy, your confidence, and maybe you develop some new tastes. And if you can take that one step, well, maybe that's the motivation you need to then expand it a little bit. Making big dramatic behavior changes is really daunting, but just one change can then produce a cascade if you have some success with it.
And especially if you start to notice that you feel a little bit better each day, if you start to notice that difference, it makes you want to keep going. All right, are you all ready for this Branzino? I feel like I'm learning so much today.
Yes.
Ready.
Love it.
Chef Thomas is like, yes, I made it. Of course I'm ready. Okay, let's see Chef Thomas create a complete Mediterranean meal featuring fresh fish with colorful roasted vegetables and a traditional Spanish sauce that brings it all together.
Okay, we're on to our next Mediterranean dish. It is a ratatouille with a little bit of a twist. But all that to say, all the ingredients that you see here are fresh produce. That's a common theme throughout the Mediterranean and the various ethnicities that use these fresh produce items. And so it's very, very important to highlight this when we think about anti-inflammatory foods. That's really represented in Mediterranean cuisine. And so it really has that sense of farm to table. First off, very, very simple. You can use a white or red onion. I'm gonna take my knife and go ahead and just peel the onion. I'm gonna slice the top and bottom. Move that to the side. Cut it in half. And we'll just take my hand and peel away, okay? We don't want that onion peel. It'll tend to burn. I'll go ahead and cut horizontally. 2 cuts going across, and then several going down. And then going across again. The reason why I'm being very careful about the size of the actual onions, you want them to cook all at the same time. So you don't want one large piece to cook less and one small piece to cook more. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take all these onions, set them down at the one end of the pan. All right, so we got the onion, I've got some tomatoes, I've cored these out. And then all we're gonna do is just cut these in half. And if you look at how I'm cutting, kind of making all the same cuts at first. So they're all in half, and then I'll cut them again as quarters. And then we're gonna go ahead and cut these into thirds across. So that's good on the tomatoes. All right, so one thing I'm gonna do is do an eggplant. So I'm gonna cut the top and bottom, like we've done with other vegetables. And then just using a peeler, top to bottom. Easily comes off. Some people like the skin and the peel. I like to take it off. So the onion, the tomatoes, and eggplant will first get started on the stovetop, okay? All right, so it's all peeled. And then, kind of like the watermelon earlier, I'm just gonna create some planks. And this one I'm gonna cut a little smaller because I do want it to cook down quicker. And you'll see, once we cook this, it is going to soften up and even become a little bit creamy and add texture. So I planked it out, I'm gonna cut dices again. All right. Set that on the pan as well. Okay, so next, you have to watch carefully on this on how I cut bell peppers. Top and bottom on the peppers, so I'll cut the bottom here. Save this, right? The top. All right, so you have the top and the stem comes off. We do not want the seeds. The seeds can be bitter. So I'm gonna start on one side, cut into it, and then roll into one long sheet. Check that out. Kind of fun, right? So let's get rid of all these seeds. I'm just gonna go ahead and, again, cut these up. This is gonna go in after we initially cook these other three ingredients. And we wanna finish with these bell peppers and zucchini, which I'm gonna cut next. So these will be a little bit bigger because I want the texture of these vegetables to actually stay in place. I want there to be a little bit of a bite. So I'm cutting those a little bit bigger. I'll show you what we'll do once we get this going here. So I cut the top and bottom, kind of like how I cut the cucumber earlier. I'm gonna cut it the same way. Cut it lengthwise in half, and then again, so cording it lengthwise. All right, and then I'm gonna cut straight across. So that'll be towards the end. Separate these. But you can see the beautiful colors. And so the more color you see in your food, the better it is for you. So we're gonna head on over to the stove. I'm gonna go ahead and start sauteing and cooking these first three ingredients, and then we'll go from there. We're gonna start off by sauteing our onions and let those cook for a little bit on a medium-high heat pan. I've also turned on the oven, set at 350 degrees to preheat, because we are gonna put that pan eventually in the oven. Let's take our onions. I've got it at a medium-high heat. I've got some extra virgin olive oil, and we're gonna actually talk about olive oil as well. I wanna add that to the pan. And I know it's hot because it's starting to smoke a little bit. I'm gonna lower the heat a little bit. Add some onions, and you'll hear that sizzle. The pan got a little bit hot. Just gonna lower it just a little bit, let it cook. Add a little salt and pepper to it. And let that actually brown up, okay? So letting this cook, we'll wait just a minute or two. All right, now we're ready for the tomatoes and the eggplant. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the tomatoes that we cut up nicely. Okay, and then we're gonna do the eggplant next. A little bit of salt there. And lastly, just a little bit of pepper with the added ingredients. So we're gonna turn off the burner, turn off the heat. We're gonna open up the oven. All right, and then we're gonna take our pot and we're gonna slide it in, and we're gonna set our timer for 40 minutes, and we'll finish it up after that. While the ratatouille is roasting in the oven, I am going to go on and roast off these little mini Yukon Gold potatoes. So I'm just gonna cut these in half, very, very simple. And then we'll toss them in some olive oil. So all right, I've got these all cut in half, and then we'll put these in the bowl. And then we will get some more of the olive oil. About 2 tablespoons worth. And so I'm gonna season that. About a teaspoon, and then some more fresh ground black pepper. I'm gonna grab a little bit of rosemary. So just cut some here. I'm gonna take off the little leaves of the rosemary. Why don't we do some fresh thyme as well? Pop some of this out. And then this, I'm actually gonna just hold over the potatoes and then just kind of scrape it off. All right, that's plenty of thyme. And then on the rosemary, since they're larger, I am going to go ahead and just chop it up real quick. Goes over. And then we'll just give it a nice little toss. Mix it around a bit. We're just gonna put this out on the pan, and hopefully this will be done similar to the time that the ratatouille is. All right, next we're moving on to our sauce, which is a romesco sauce. It's a Spanish sauce that's pretty famous in Spain. There's 3 ingredients that are key to this sauce. That is roasted red bell peppers, toasted almonds, and sherry vinegar. We've also got some tomatoes, some flat leaf parsley, as well as some red onion. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by chopping up these tomatoes. Same as I did before, cutting it in half, and then also quartering them. And then we'll add that to a blender. And then for this one, I'm only gonna need just a small partial piece of the onion. We'll get that peeled as well. We'll chop this up into 4s, and that should blend up as well. Next, I've got my roasted red bell peppers. You can either do this on your own, or you can buy it from the store already done. For convenience today, I got it already done. Okay, so that's gonna go in the blender. I've got some chopped parsley, some leaves. Okay, and then we've got some of our toasted almonds as well. Very important part of the dish. And then that little punch of flavor of where this sauce comes into play is this little bit of sherry vinegar, okay? We'll definitely hit it with some salt and also some black pepper. Okay, here we go. We're gonna start blending. Okay, so you want to blend it until it's a nice smooth texture. And so looks like this is nicely blended, and we'll go ahead and reserve this for when we put the plate together. Okay, next we're going to move on to our protein, which is something called branzino or Mediterranean sea bass. The actual fish is on some paper towels, skinned down. So I'm trying to dry it out as much as we can. And so I'm going to actually flip them over. Wow, it's nice and beautiful. You can see that black and silver skin. So what I want to do right now is also just take a nice paper towel and just make sure we're getting all the moisture out. Just want to make sure that it's not wet to touch. This was thawed, It's best to thaw overnight. If you have to do it in water, you can. So I'm doing that here, and then here's what I'm first gonna do. I'm gonna flip it back over to the flesh. When you cook this, you want it to go into a hot pan. The oil needs to be slightly smoking, and then the skin side down. Okay, so the skin needs to be underneath this. My hand is the pan, the skin needs to be touching. That's the first step. And you're gonna cook it about 80% of the way on that skin side, so it definitely gets crispy. When you're dealing with delicate fish or proteins, you want it to be not over salted, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm just gonna get a little pinch into my fingers, and then we're just gonna season nice and high and even, okay? Look at that. All right, we'll go to the next fillet. Nice and high and even. Good coverage. Go to the next one. There's a little bit more on that one. And here's this last one. This one looks a little bit bigger, so we'll adjust with a little bit more salt. Okay, same thing with the black pepper. All right, and then we'll do the same thing on the skin side. It's just as important to have that skin be seasoned as well. And skin, it is good and tasty if it's salted correctly as well. All right, why don't we come over to the stove and you can check out the pan. So I've got a little bit of oil in the pan. It's slightly smoky. I'm just gonna add a little bit more olive oil in there. So here's the first one, and I'm gonna lay it in the pan, but I'm gonna do it going away from me so it doesn't splash towards me. So drop, and then away, okay? It should be a medium-high heat. Here's the next one. I'll do the same thing. Drop, and then away. Let it brown as much as possible. So I don't have it on super extreme high heat. It's not on low heat. If the heat was too low, it actually starts steaming. And so we don't want it to do that either. We want some medium high heat on it. Okay, so that one's ready. And here's the last one, all right. So at this point, I'm just gonna turn off the heat and let it finish cooking in the pan. So that way we're not overcooking it. I'm not trying to brown the flesh side. I've actually browned the skin side, and I can already feel how crispy it already is just by touch. And then we'll next step is to actually pull out the ratatouille and finish that as well. All right, so here is our ratatouille. It's roasted up. It's actually not complete yet. Here's what I would like to do. I'm actually gonna mash this up so it gets a little bit creamy. The tomatoes as well as the eggplant, just to break it down and help it out a little bit. So that's what I'm doing right now. Just giving it a little mash, get that creaminess into the actual vegetable. Here's the last thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna actually put this back in to the oven, but we want to add a few more items. So here we go. Here's our peppers and our zucchini. Okay. Kind of get that mixed in. And then this will go back into the oven, and that'll complete our ratatouille. Okay, it's gonna go in for another 15 minutes or so. While the ratatouille is finishing the oven, I do wanna make sure I got some fresh herbs to finish it with. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take some basil leaves, some of these basil stems, and we'll pick some of these leaves off. And like I did earlier with the mint, I'm gonna actually slice these into a chiffonade. This will add a ton of flavor and punch to the ratatouille. I'm also gonna take a couple sprigs of fresh parsley, and then we'll actually chop that as well for flavor into the ratatouille. So just a nice little rough chop on the parsley. And also the basil, I'm just gonna kind of bunch it up here, and then we'll do some nice thin slices of basil. And just, there's nothing like fresh herbs to be folded into your ratatouille. Okay, and we'll just leave that there. All right, how about next we grab the ratatouille, and we'll do that. I did pull out the potatoes that we roasted off earlier, and we'll actually meld those and put those together. So here is that ratatouille. I'm just gonna take these herbs. We're gonna go ahead and just drizzle that in. We're gonna mix. So you have the creaminess of the onions and tomatoes and eggplant, and then you've got the slightly roasted bell pepper and zucchini. And so there's a contrast of textures and also great flavor. Just gonna hit it with the last bit of salt, black pepper. All right, so that's there. Also, earlier, we had our roasted potatoes. So I'm actually gonna add that to this dish. So we have a little bit of starch in it as well. All right. And then it'll just also catch that flavor of the ratatouille. So why don't we, at this point, go ahead and plate our ratatouille and roasted potatoes. So here's that ratatouille. I'm just going to give it a little bit of garnish, a couple of fresh parsley leaves. And then earlier, I went ahead and that romesco sauce, put it into this bowl. We're just gonna garnish it with a little bit of crumbled up almond, toasted almond, okay? Okay. So here is this beautiful fish, branzino, that we were able to cook off earlier. Gonna make sure we, of course, can't forget the lemons. Again, we'll do some garnish with some parsley and freshness. So we've completed our menu for today. We have the watermelon feta cheese salad. We also have the roasted ratatouille. We have the romesco sauce. And then we have crispy skin branzino fish. As you can see, this was not intimidating. It's pretty straightforward, really easy to plate, and anyone can try the Mediterranean cuisine and diet.
Okay, that romesco sauce looked incredible. Can you explain what it is for someone who's never heard of it?
Yeah, so it's a sauce that's from Spain, and it's literally just a few ingredients put together and blended into that. It's very versatile. And so its base is roasted red peppers. It's got sherry vinegar and almonds. And so I added tomatoes and parsley to it as well. And you blend it into a smooth texture. Great, great on seafood and chicken.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so, and then, look, I made quite a bit, but you could easily save it, serve it the next day. And then also, you can even thin it out a little bit with olive oil and use it as a dressing.
Well, I love how colorful that ratatouille was. Can you talk us through those vegetables? Why did you pick those?
Yeah, so they're very approachable. I know there's one that was kind of like, hey, eggplant, how do you do that?
I know when we were watching that eggplant, I was like, ooh, eggplant
Yeah.
makes me a little nervous.
So hopefully what I did with it is more approachable and how to actually navigate eggplant. But on top of that, it's really looking at the red onions, the bell pepper, the eggplant, and then the zucchini. Those are all approachable, as well as the fresh herbs that went in there. And then the potatoes that got added in at the end, that's actually like a Greek version called biryani. And so Spain has a version of ratatouille called pisto. And so all that to say, I think it shows as very approachable. And you can even prep all those vegetables ahead of time.
Right.
So, and just put it together.
I'm a little jealous that we don't have that on set today. I feel like we really missed out, Christy.
We did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I did get a chance to taste it afterwards with the crew.
Right.
And it was very tasty.
It was, they dug in,
They
didn't
dug
they?
in, they did.
They dug
They
right
did.
in.
They did for sure.
So, Christy, from a nutrition standpoint, what makes this combination so powerful for older adults?
Well, in the sauce alone, it was heart healthy thanks to the almonds, plus a good source of antioxidants. And then the meal as a whole, I mean, just loaded with antioxidants. And really, you have the entire Mediterranean diet represented right there all together. And I mean, it's gorgeous, and we eat first with our eyes. So, especially for older adults who may have some sensory declines, having the vibrant colors can help stimulate appetite if it's not there naturally.
Well, and I think too about the antioxidants you mentioned earlier for just a better brain, physical, and just overall health being so important.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so what if someone is intimidated by cooking fish? I know I mentioned earlier that the crispy skin makes me a little bit nervous. So what tips do you have?
Yeah, so it's look, at the end of the day, it's trying and practicing. It's learning the heat of the stove and the fire you have, and then also the pan itself. And so you want there to be pretty decent amount of heat to where the oil in the pan is smoking, but you don't want to be torched or smoking to the point where it burns.
I'm not setting off a
And so,
fire alarm. That's what
right,
you're saying.
right.
Okay, great.
But so you want to build, the more you do it, the more you'll have comfortability in cooking that seafood and that fish. Also, what I was looking for when you do skin down, you want to cook it to see, how do you know it's at 80%? You'll start to see the edges on top start to turn from translucent to more of a white solid color. You'll see it cook through. And so once that happens, that's when I flip it over to
Okay.
finish the rest of it. And I actually turn off the heat.
Okay.
So when you flip it over, you can turn it off. Also, yes, these were thinner fillets and they cook very quickly. So it depends on the thickness of your fillet as well.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay, so with the ratatouille or the romesco sauce, is that something you can make ahead of time? Because I can
absolutely.
imagine for older adults that
Mhm.
meal prep is really helpful.
No, absolutely. That, especially that romesco, I made quite a bit. You can reserve it, save it, put it in the fridge, and then reheating that ratatouille is totally great. And so, and then even mixing and matching different proteins to that ratatouille, absolutely.
Okay, Christy, how do you help families and older adults make eating a Mediterranean diet more enjoyable and social?
Well, Thomas just mentioned something that is what we do in my house quite a bit, and that's I will make a lot of different things, roast different vegetables, create different grains, and then we do a build your own bowl. And so not only does it make it sort of fun, everyone getting to do their own thing, we do have some picky eaters around that will have their choice of what they can and maybe won't get. There's also, I mean, if you think about tapas from Spain, you could have a tapas night and really feature items from the Mediterranean diet, and everyone thinks tapas is fun, right?
Yeah. Well, what's great with tapas, you can get a piece of grilled bread
Mhm.
and top it with that ratatouille
Right,
or top it with that romesco.
right.
And so you
Yeah,
create your own little tapa. So yeah,
Like choose your
absolutely.
own adventure.
That's right.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
Well, you could actually do like skewers. I mean, there's that interactive element as well that you were kind of alluding to.
yep.
Yes, interaction. You could do like a theme night where everybody picks an ingredient from the Mediterranean diet. And if it's all adults, you could have everyone bring a dish featuring an ingredient. Or if it's your own sort of, family unit where maybe one person is doing the cooking, everyone picks out a recipe that then, one person makes. So I just love how versatile it is.
Well, I love the idea of meal stations too. I know you and I were talking about that earlier off camera. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Meal stations.
Yeah, so like the whole grain pitas, you're like, wait, what did we talk about
What did we
earlier?
What?
Remember this?
Like whole grain pitas or like whole grain dough, or that you've got, like you said, brown rice bowls, like different things, different
Yeah.
types of vegetables that people can integrate.
Mixing and matching. So one person may want, like you said, a pita base. I'm
Right.
always going to want a greens base. My husband's never going to want a greens base.
Right.
He's always going to want a grain, but having that variety there really helps. And usually, as a bonus, I have leftovers for lunch
Right.
or for maybe a couple of days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's transition to our audience Q&A. We had some great questions from our audience. How do you handle Mediterranean eating when caring for someone with dietary restrictions?
First of all, the Mediterranean diet it's a diet of inclusion. So
That's
with
great.
that, you have a lot of flexibility and
Right.
ability to adapt to whatever dietary preferences or limitations you might have. For example, one of the sort of base ingredients in the Mediterranean diet is seeds and nuts.
Hmm.
Well, if you have a nut allergy,
Right.
obviously you're going to want to avoid that. So, as an alternative, you could take chickpeas, roast them up, make them nice and crispy, and use them in place of
Great
a
point.
seed or a nut.
That's a
So,
great idea. Well,
Mhm.
and I think about some people have a sensitivity to nightshades. So whether that be tomatoes or peppers.
Yeah.
So having to make those types of adjustments as well.
Yeah. And there's such a great variety of produce,
Right.
legumes,
yep.
nuts, and seeds. Um, and look, at the very beginning, we also mentioned all the different ethnicities represented in the Mediterranean as well.
Mhm.
So there are options to mix and match and substitute for sure.
What is the difference between regular table salt and sea salt?
Yeah. So it was interesting. The crew ended up tasting the food afterwards, and they're asking me, "Did you just only season this with salt and pepper?" And I
Mhm.
said, "Yes." So here's the thing about sea salt. Um, it's harvested from the ocean, it's evaporated, but they don't extract any minerals out of it.
Mm.
Whereas table salt, they're taking some of the nutrition and minerals out of it.
Right.
There's also a texture to sea salt that actually helps when you actually cook it and bite into the food. So there is something different about sea salt in that state, but you definitely hold on to more minerals and nutrition,
Mhm.
and it is tastier. Table salt also it tends to be a lot saltier,
Right.
and so it's less forgiving. Once you've oversalted with table salt, you can't come back. It's really hard, and so I would say sea salt lends to bring out flavor and
Right.
add flavor in that way. Um, and so that is a preference. And believe it or not, the Mediterranean is also known for their sea salt as well. And so you can get sea salt from the Mediterranean at various stores as well.
That's so interesting because as you were talking, I started thinking about my family sitting around a dinner table and where I don't put salt on anything that's not already like how it was made. I have other members of my family who are just pouring salt on it,
Yeah,
table salt on it. So it's interesting to think about just the health aspect of salt as well.
for sure, for sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so what is the healthiest oil for cooking?
It is extra virgin olive oil,
Mhm.
or it doesn't have to be extra virgin. It could be virgin, but olive oil in general, I would say um, has so many health benefits on top of the omega-3 fatty acid in there, anti-inflammatory components of
Right.
that nutrition, and it doesn't lose any of that when you heat it up, and so it still exists within any type of cooking method. The way they harvest olive oil is very natural.
Mhm.
They're not adding heat to it. And once you do that, it's called something else. It falls off.
Right.
So all that to say, when they press it and then they're looking at the level of acidity. The lower the acidity, the purer it is.
Mhm.
And so yeah, with olive oil, that's why I appreciate the different European and South American countries that retain its purity in that way.
How important is a sharp knife, and what styles of knives make veggies more enjoyable to cook with?
Yeah, so I would say, um, gosh, the one I was using, it's called a Chinese cleaver,
Mhm.
and I think it's $30 on Amazon. And so it doesn't have to be super expensive. It's also how you care for those knives. That's another class we can do one day,
Right.
and another video on knife care. But a chef knife,
Mhm.
a standard chef knife, is very, very versatile. I would also say if it's forged. Type in forged chef knife and you'll be able to see the difference,
Okay.
where the knife is also a part of the handle.
Got it. Okay, so key takeaways from today. Start small, swap butter for olive oil, and add fish once a week. I got that. Are there any other takeaways that you both want to mention? Focus on fresh foods
Yes.
and simple preparation.
You can always prep ahead of time.
Right, absolutely. You can also you do the meal prep, which is so important, especially that ratatouille and romesco sauce that I'm going to be making like tomorrow. And then Mediterranean eating is all about community and enjoyment. There's no restriction.
Yes.
That's right.
We covered that as well.
Mhm.
Is there anything else we missed that you guys want to make sure we cover?
I think it's really just about trying and starting. That's
Yeah.
really what it is, and getting more comfortable with it.
Yeah, Christy, what about for you?
Yeah, be a little adventurous. You know, what have you got to lose? Just give something a try.
You never know.
That's right. That's right. And there are just so many options in the Mediterranean diet. I feel like there's something in there that will work for almost anybody.
Chef Thomas, Christy, thank you so much for being here with us and for making Mediterranean eating feel so accessible and enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Okay, so this week I challenge you to pick one Mediterranean recipe and cook it with someone you care about. And as always, you can find this episode and more at brookdale.com/webcast or on our YouTube channel. We hope that you'll share it with anyone that you feel might find it helpful. Be sure to keep an eye out for information on upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.